Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us for our software automation webinar series. My name is Courtney Scott, and I am the customer account manager for all of our Acumatica customers here at SWK, and it's my pleasure to welcome you all here. Today, I'll be joined by SWK's Acumatica Solutions Architect, Jeremy Potoka, who is going to walk us through the new additions to Acumatica that can help enhance your company's ERP experience. And just a few housekeeping items. All lines are going to be muted during the presentation, but we are going to record this webinar and we can distribute to you all in a few days. So in case there's anything that you feel that you may have missed or wanted to go back to, that information is available to you. And if you have any questions during the webinar, please go ahead and type it in the chat box at the bottom of your GoToMeeting webinar sidebar, and then hit send question to staff and at any time throughout the webinar, and we can go ahead and address those questions. And without further ado, let's start with our presentation, and I'll let Jeremy take it away.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for joining today. As Courtney said, my name is Jeremy Potoka. I've likely met some of you, but many of you who have been an SWK customer for more than the last year, I probably have not met. So really glad that we could put on this webinar today and hope that we can get into a more routine cadence of having these webinars. So the main goal of today's webinar is to review the latest version highlights of Acumatica. Now, I realize throughout our customer base, we have folks on different versions and different deployment methods, but the latest version, called 2018 R2, was released in Boston in September. Acumatica, as most of you know, is now in a regular 2-a-year release schedule, and they happen to do the launch every year in Boston in September. So after that, there was a sequence of road events that happened. And what we wanted to do is make it very easy for our customers to learn about the new functionality that is included in this version. The release document is about 120 pages long. So there's a lot of really great functionality there. But today, we put together a list of the top 5. Before we jump into the software and actually take a look at these top 5 features from 2018 R2, I just wanted to take a minute to look at our agenda for today and just set the expectations for timing. The first thing that we're going to do here is I'm actually going to give you a few SWK Acumatica practice updates. There have been some changes to the practice over the past 6 months, even back to the past year. And just want to make sure you understand who is who in the Acumatica practice. The next piece we'll be talking about is just a brief overview of the Acumatica Summit, and that should say 2019 because it's in January. And the Acumatica Summit will be in Houston this year. I have a little information about that, and as most of you already know, either through the newsletter or from Courtney, we are going to be giving away 2 Acumatica Summit passes to some of you on the line today. so that'll be fun, and we'll follow up with the winners after today, probably tomorrow. Next, I want to talk just for a moment about Acu Exchange. Acu Exchange is a very close partner of ours. Some of you may have never heard of. So they've actually sponsored this webinar from the standpoint of also offering a $50 gift card. So we want to make sure that we tell you who they are and how you can be entered into a raffle to win that $50 gift card. We should have called this the giveaway webinar because we're giving away a lot of stuff. Next is the meat of what we're going to be accomplishing is the 2018 functionality and feature review. And like I said, I have 5 separate areas that we're going to drill into in more detail. And then at the end, I just wanted to be able to facilitate some open-ended questions. I'm going to stop throughout the webinar today and just keep an eye on the chat and see what questions might be popping up. But Courtney is going to be helping me kind of keep tabs on the chat and make sure that we answer some questions. So certainly if we don't answer something on today's call, we want to make sure that we can answer it in the near future. So very quick, just a few updates about the Acumatica practice. We have a new Acumatica practice manager, Jeb Badecki, and he's not new to SWK Technologies. Jeb came over from our Sage 500 practice and has run that practice for a number of years, and made the transition into the Acumatica practice in September. So we're really excited to have Jeb on board. He wanted to be a part of today's webinar and just say hi to everybody for those of you that haven't interacted with him already. But unfortunately, he's in meetings at our New Jersey office this week and wasn't able to make it. If you're interested in meeting with Jeb or talking with Jeb, Courtney would be happy to set that up. As I mentioned earlier, I've been with SWK for about a year now, and I've interacted mainly with the newer customers that have come on board in the last year. But the customers before then, or possibly customers through ISM or one of our acquisitions, I have not interacted with, likely. So I just wanted to take a minute and let you know who I am. My name's Jeremy. I work out of New England. I'm based in Portland, Maine. And I am your dedicated Acumatica solution architect. And what that means is I work with both new customers that are looking at Acumatica and maybe are on one of our other products. And I also work with existing customers when they're looking to do a new project. A really good example of that is somebody who's using Acumatica today and they'd like to turn on the CRM functionality. Another example could be somebody that wants to implement Acu Exchange for AP automation. I haven't yet been formally introduced. That was part of the goal for today in front of the larger existing base. But I just want to let you guys know what I'm here for and how you can use me to really gain some more efficiency and gain some more functionality out of the product that you're using. So let's move into the Acumatica Summit 2019. This will be my 6th summit. I've been around in the Acumatica space for a long time. And typically what they've done is they've gone from coast to coast. So a few years ago, it was in Orlando and then San Diego. Last year, some of you may know, it was in Nashville. And this year, it's going to be January 27th to February 1st in Houston. So pretty central location for our wide customer base across the country to really get to. We're really excited about this summit. We have a lot of folks from SWK that are going to be there. So, I hope that we can help some of you today with those free passes, figure out a way to get there. And for those of you that maybe don't get the free pass, keep in mind and reach out to Courtney for more details, because this is a really great event. They're projecting about 1,500 people at the event this year, both partners and customers. And this is a great event, not just to interact with the Acumatica staff and to watch the keynotes and participate in the customer sessions, but given that we're going to have so many employees from SWK there, it'd be a great time to meet with some SWKers that maybe you haven't interacted with. And I'd like to make the offer to anybody that's going to be there. I'd love to meet you, grab coffee that week. I will be there from Sunday until Friday. The place that you can go to learn more about the Acumatica Summit is the Acumatica website. You can go there by hitting summit.acumatica.com. You'll get all sorts of information about the different training, the ISVs that will be there, some of the sessions and attendance information. So you'll be able to watch a couple of the video teasers for this year. And we'll also be able to see some of the videos from last year by going to the Summit 2018 keynotes. Again, it's a really great event, and we would love to get as many of our own customers there and spend some time with you all at the event. So from there, I did mention earlier that we have the 2 passes that we'll be giving away. So we will communicate that to the winners at likely tomorrow, as I mentioned. And then we also wanted to just talk about the Acu Exchange giveaway. You're going to be entered in by participating in the survey at the end of the webinar today. You're going to be entered in for a chance to win a $50 MasterCard virtual gift card or an e-gift card that will be emailed to you, so you don't need to wait for a physical card to come. Some of you may be familiar with Acu Exchange, some of you may not. Acu Exchange is an integrated tool with Acumatica that does AP automation. Now, we could have a full hour webinar just about AP automation, so I'll give you a very high level of the product right now. It's an integrated 50% service and 50% software to help your organization with accounts payable. And what I mean by that is Acu Exchange will integrate with your Acumatica instance and actually collect data from invoices that are mailed to their PO boxes in Charlotte. They OCR or manually code the invoices into the Acu Exchange module, and then your invoices appear in Acumatica. You have total control and approvals around your invoices, but what this takes out is a lot of the paper that gets passed around, right? And it really allows for a digital format of that. On the other side, that's the invoice capture. There's the pay. And we have customers that don't use the invoice capture, but they use the pay. And what Avid Pay does is Avid Pay will allow you to execute payments from Acumatica, travel through the integration to the Avid Exchange portal, and it will make the payments to the vendors in whatever way that they've already established. ACH, cutting a check. From your standpoint, you're still releasing payments and approving them. What you're not doing is actually printing checks, mailing them out. Avid Exchange is going to do all of that for you. So when you think about Avid, I want you to think about two things mainly: the invoice capture and the pay. There are a number of other features that it can do for you, and it's a very, very cost-effective product. It has a very compelling ROI, and we'd love to talk to you more about that if you're interested in learning more. So that brings us to the core of our session for today, and there are the top 5 features that I've put together that I'm going to highlight today, actually in an instance of the 2018 R2 Acumatica functionality that I think is really, really nice and really beneficial, and even possibly something that you've thought of or asked for before from Acumatica. So the 5 different areas that we're going to look at today are mobile push notifications. We're going to talk about side panels, what they are, and how you might be able to use them once upgraded. PopUp notes, custom fields or attributes on transactional records. And then we'll just take a brief pit stop and discuss the RESTful web services that have been further developed once again in Acumatica 2018 R2. So I'm going to just stop and take a quick look at the chat before we go on and make any moves into the demonstration for today. I am seeing one question there. Is the DAC removed in 2018 R1 restored in the 2018 R2 version? I'd be interested to know, Richard, a little bit more about that, specifically what you're referring to. So I'm just going to kind of put that one in the parking lot for. I think I might know what you're talking about, but we may just want to have a conversation and step through that together. Great. Well, let's go ahead. Please, guys, enter more questions in. We're not going to ignore those if we can't get to them today. I would love to have some follow-up items to follow up with everyone and answer any questions that we can today. So with that, we're going to go ahead and jump into the Acumatica instance that I've prepared for us today and go ahead and get started. So as long as I haven't timed out here, you can see that I am in an instance of Acumatica. Some of you, depending on your version, may just look at the UI and still be running the classic user interface. So I'll just do a quick overview of some of the UI changes, just in case there are a few folks on the call. I believe it was the 2017 R1 version or 2017 R2 where they actually really started implementing this new user interface. So some of you are probably used to the 6.1 or version 6 and prior, where it was a very static menu. Acumatica made some big enhancements, and the default now in the newer versions is to this workspace. It still runs off the same sitemap, the same tree structure, except now you have these really big workspaces that break up your menus into tiles that you use most frequently. The same breakdown of screens like you're used to on those 4 different tabs of the classic user interface, except now you can actually open up and have a quick menu versus an all items menu. So Acumatica has tried to make this more user-friendly to navigate, and we continue to see more effort each version to be a very user-friendly product. Another change that happened was the universal search. These are things that happened prior to 2018 R2 again. I just feel the need to highlight them because I'm going to use these as I navigate throughout the system myself. And the universal search is located at the top and now actually extends into menu items, transactions, help articles, and searches all those files that you could attach to records, like an invoice copy to an invoice record in Acumatica on the AP bill. So if I came in here and I went to vendor, for example, I can type vendors and get to my vendor record. For many of you, this is the only way that you've been interacting with Acumatica. For others, you might be on the classic UI. And again, if you have questions about how you can get to the new UI, or how you can even, maybe you already have it in the version you're running today, but you would like to change it and test out this one, again, feel free to reach out. We'd be happy to answer those questions. So aside from those UI features that changed a long time ago, what Acumatica has focused on in the latest release are additional features that make Acumatica more user-friendly. And you could see some of those were about looking at data like via side panels, and others are about notifications. Now, if I actually went into my notifications area, many of you are familiar with the email engine and the notification templates. And that's been around, as far as I can remember in Acumatica, having an email engine connected and being able to have notifications that go out at different intervals. Last year, Acumatica released some functionality that allowed us to have what's called business events. And those business events are essentially generic inquiries that are listening for a certain event to happen in your business. And when that event happens, it triggers a notification, okay? So it's important to understand that base of information before now extending into mobile notifications. One example that I know many of our customers use is approvals. If someone assigns an approval to you, you don't necessarily want to have to wait for them to log back into Acumatica to see. So we had set up email templates that will send you an email when there's an approval pending your review and approval. What Acumatica did in 2018 R2 is now extend that into a mobile notification. Now, it has been possible for a few years to actually have a notification that would allow us to send a text message through a Twilio integrated tool, but this is now through the native mobile app. So if I happen to be on my mobile application today, and I was going to cast that up during the webinar, I would be able to see a push notification similar to what you might get from your weather app when there's a storm coming, or almost looking like a text message or a news feed update. Certainly, you can control that through the App Store in your or your own settings on your device. You allow or disallow push notifications. But the way that this is going to be used now is very similar to the notifications in the email engine. So if I were to come in, I could create a notification when, let's see, maybe on the customer management side, or I wanted to get a quote, a notification every time a certain quote was entered over $10,000, right? So I could see what my sales reps are doing. Or maybe it's the example of the approvals. You now want to get in a push notification when there's an approval pending your approval. So this will be the place that you would come and you would set that up. I wanted to highlight the features today and move kind of fast. So this is not one that we're actually going to try to set up and do together here on the line. If you do set these up, it takes, maybe 15 or 20 minutes, possibly a little longer on your first one. But this is a very powerful feature. Now we have an unlimited user system, unlimited users in a browser, and they can also extend notifications out and receive notifications on their mobile app. The reason why I love this one, and a lot of our newer customers that are starting in this version love it, is because they get to avoid the emails. The last thing that we want sometimes is an email about a work item in Acumatica. This keeps your inbox a little cleaner, allows you to focus on what's important there, but still get notified when an event happens that needs your attention. Okay? When you upgrade, what you can do is remember to select the help documentation in the upper right, and this will be your quick guide to setting up these mobile notifications. So if I wanted to set up the notifications here, I've got a really good example, and this is an example of a rep. Again, this is a CRM example that an opportunity has been assigned to you. So this is a really good way to walk through some great documentation Acumatica has put together to be able to set up the business event and configure the push notification. The second item that we wanted to talk about today was pop-up notes. So again, I'm going to go back and use the vendor example. This is one that we will do live today. So I'm going to select my ArcTac vendor here. And most of you are using or are hopefully aware of the note functionality. And notes are included on master file transactions and, master files and transactional records in Acumatica. So if I had a special note, this is the normal note field. If I had a special note that I wanted something to pop up when I was on a purchase order for this specific vendor or an accounts payable bill for this specific vendor, I can now come down, select Add Pop-Up Note, put a specific note in, let's do call Courtney for updated W-9. We might want to know that we're waiting for a vendor's W-9. So now I still have preserved my original note field that Acumatica included. I have a specific pop-up note waiting for me. And if I go in and let's go ahead and we're going to enter a purchase order. I'm going to just open in the new tab. Make sure that I save that. So I'm going to go ahead and hit the plus to add a new PO. I'm going to go ahead and select my ArcTac networks. And what you're going to see is the pop-up note. Call Courtney for the updated W-9. Okay. Now, this is not meant to replace the approval workflow in Acumatica on certain documents. This is really a pop-up notification that you set at the master file level that will permeate into the transactional details. Another example could be the customer record. If there was a certain pop-up note that I needed to get on a customer, then I would be able to store that on the customer file and see that on a sales order, for example, or an accounts receivable bill. Okay, great. So we covered mobile notifications, side panels. The next place that we're going to go to is, we talked about the pop-up notes. The next place we're going to go is the custom fields, also known as the attributes. And I'm going to make my way back to the vendor record because, again, I'll review existing functionality and talk about how it's been improved. Many of you are familiar with the attributes tool in Acumatica. What an attribute has been historically on a master file is a custom field, user-defined field, right? We used to call them UDFs in the Sage days. Well, in Acumatica, you've always been able to add unlimited user-defined fields on master file records. And the way that we did that was we went into the attributes tool inside of the common settings. We added the type of custom field that it should be. So I could say, I'm going to make this a combo versus a multi-select. And then I'm going to put in the different values. Since this one happens to be a combo, for example, I will put in the different values. So if I made it just a text, I wouldn't have to do anything. We could just save this. And you'd be able to now establish this custom field on a specific record. Okay. So again, this would be set up, and the way you tie it together is using the class, either the customer class, the employee class, or the vendor class. So this is my services class. And you'll see I have the attributes tab here. I'm going to pull in that test, which remember was just an open field. Test object. I'm going to go ahead and hit save. And now when I come back onto my vendor record, I'm just going to refresh. So the browser can refresh what we're looking at. And now when I go to the attributes tab, I have a custom field. That took about 2.5 minutes to do. If you haven't used that functionality, that's been around, again, something going back to version 5 in Acumatica, and I encourage you to do it. If you have questions on how to set that up, please reach out to us and we can help you with that. The pain point historically using these attributes has been, wow, that's great, it's easy, I can pull it into my reporting and my forms. However, I don't have access to attributes on transactional records. Well, in Acumatica 2018 R2, Acumatica has extended the attribute functionality to the transactional level. So if I go back to my purchase order screen, if I needed to add a custom field to my purchase order, I would go to customization. If I have access to the customizer user role, if you don't see this, it's likely that you just don't have the correct user access role. I can hit manage user defined fields. And what the system will allow me to do is actually add a field that already exists in that attribute tool. So I'm going to pull the same one in over here. And since I only have one, I don't need to organize it very much. There's just one. And I can go back. So the value of us having these user-defined fields is now I can build out my own subset of summary level attributes. So we're preserving at the header level all of the fields, except now I just built out this second tab and I can track additional data. This data is tied to this purchase order and once again can be pulled into all reporting and linked into this purchase order. So this is another great use case for, hey, I need to be able to add custom fields on the fly on transactional records. As long as it's truly metadata and we're not looking for additional business logic around that field, the attribute tool is now a great way to do that. Great. Okay. Well, the next place that we're going to go to is we've got two more items to review today, and we're doing okay on time. One is side panels, and another one is PopUp Notes. Or I'm sorry, we did PopUp Notes. Side panels and the RESTful web services. So if I go in, let's talk about the side panels first. If I go into my generic inquiry tool, what a side panel is a way to view, for example, from a single customer record, or a list of customers, better yet, I can view in a pop-out side panel the customer themselves. Or if I'm on a specific inquiry screen, I can, without jumping in or drilling into or opening up a whole new window, I can now easily see the functionality, the data that I need to from the same screen using a pop-out side panel. So I'm going to go ahead and just pull in the customers. And we'll just use one of these here. For those of you that haven't seen this screen before, again, this is one of the reporting tools in Acumatica. This is the generic inquiry screen. In my opinion, the generic inquiry in general is one of the most valuable tool sets in Acumatica. And if it's new to you, I would love to spend a little bit of time and tell you more about it and how you can use this to create your views and your reports that you need in Acumatica. So basically what we have been able to do now is from an inquiry, we can create, we can pull in additional screens that we would like to access that inquiry and change the window mode over here to the right to be side panel. And essentially what that is going to do for me is it's going to now give us another view of that data and actually open up a customer file from a customer list as an example. And I'm just going to go ahead and go to my list. Once set up, I can now select, for example, ABC Holdings, and it will pop out from the side rather than currently right now what it does is drill directly into the customer record. It allows you to stay within one tab and have the screen do a little bit more of the jumping around for you, so you're not wrestling with multiple tabs in the browser or maybe multiple windows on your desktop. You don't have to change. If this is a requirement or something that you liked about an older system that you've used or a different cloud system that you've used, this might be something that you really want to implement sooner than later. But as of, when you do your upgrade, it's not going to ask you to make any changes. It's simply another option for you to change from your inquiry settings. Now I'm going to try to set one up here. I am going to copy my inquiry out. We're going to create a new one from that. So it's going to ask me to put in the title at least. And then I will be able to, should be able to paste in the rest of my details. Again, this has been around for a long time, the copy paste on records. So if that's something that you're using, great. If not, I encourage you, if you ever have something that you're entering multiple, like even let's say a purchase order from last month, you just want to copy and paste that into a new PO. Sometimes if it's a master file like this, you do need to give it a title and tab off, and then it'll allow you to paste the rest of the details in. Okay. Great.
Hey, Jeremy.
So this is the...
Sorry, I don't mean to...
Oh, yep.
Oh, I'm sorry. I don't mean to interrupt. I just wanted to make sure I stopped you before we got too far past where we did have one question come up. I'm thinking it was referring to the last screen that we were on. It's asking, are the UDFs only applicable to this screen?
Oh, thank you for stopping me, Courtney. I didn't see that one come up. The user-defined fields... Oh, yeah, thanks. The user-defined fields are applicable to any of those transactional screens. So they've always been there on master files. You can now do this on purchase orders, sales orders, AR invoices, you know, any of your typical transactional screens you would be able to use. And again, the way that you get to that in the new version is selecting customization in the upper right, and then being able to, you'll see it if you have the right user role, add user-defined fields or add attribute. So, great question. Courtney, were there any more, or are we okay to continue?
I think we're okay to continue for now, and I'll make sure to jump in if we get any other ones that pop up.
Great, thank you. So the way that this works now is I can actually have a side panel pop up here. I'm going to give this an icon that you'll see access to. Let's just use that little build icon. And the field that I'm going to be able to access the side panel from is the account CD, which is essentially the customer ID or the business account ID. So I'm doing this new one on the fly here. Let's see what type of data that we get. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and view that inquiry. Now you can see over to the left that I actually have that little wrench that we established in the pop-out. And what the system should do, remember we're doing this one on the fly today, is read the customer file from the row I'm selected on, ABC Holding. And now I can actually access and edit my customer record. There's lots of different ways that you guys might decide to use these side panels. I really love, it's such a simple feature, but I love the fact that if a customer calls me, I can come to an inquiry, use the inquiry to search for their information, and then make my updates, and all the same user security controls apply as always, as if I was on the screen by itself. Make the updates for the customer information, new payment method, whatever it may be, and then collapse that, save it and collapse it. And I never actually had to leave a single tab on the browser to go to another one. Okay, great. Again, a lot more relevant use cases for you guys on the line today of how that might be able to be used. So again, if you've got questions about how to set that up, or when it comes time for your upgrade, you would like to set that up, please reach out. The last area that we're going to be talking about today is the APIs. And there hasn't been much updated from the web service endpoints in Acumatica, but I wanted to highlight this mainly because Acumatica continues to provide new functionality to make Acumatica the easiest ERP system to integrate with. I was with some folks yesterday in Kentucky that are considering purchasing Acumatica, and they had their development team inside of the conference room, and I showed this functionality here, and the developers love it, the IT people love it. People that really are about having a good, solid platform and integration technologies love the web service endpoints. Some of you that are less technical are familiar with the term APIs and integrations. What you need to know about that is Acumatica has the most relevant API, which is called a REST API, to be able to connect to other systems. Now, the APIs have gone through multiple versions, going back to version 5 in Acumatica, but today they're very easy to use. I'm just going to show you an example, and this is one of the reasons I wanted to highlight it. Acumatica does store multiple versions of the endpoints. So these are your endpoint, your RESTful web service endpoints. If I go to 18.2, you can see that there was an additional record added over here. So if I go ahead and actually select, for example, the account, or maybe let's just choose this top one, and I select my Open API 2.0, a field or a file type or technology that is frequently used in RESTful web service integrations is called a JSON file. And JSON is used to communicate across the API data from one system to another. And that could be to get data, to post data to another system. And in Acumatica, these days, it's as simple as selecting the endpoint and running that what's called Swagger schema, Swagger JSON file. And Acumatica pushes out the file, the JSON structured file for you. So these are the types of tools, again, that are a little bit more technical. Everything else we talked about today was kind of user engaged, user friendly. This, in my opinion, is one of the most powerful integration platform features Acumatica has with the Open API 2.0 technology. You know, what I would encourage everyone on the line today is you likely moved to Acumatica to get out of a place where you have multiple silos of data. Acumatica now makes it even easier to make sure that your systems are connected. So if you have another system and maybe you're running one of those import-export routines and integration services in Acumatica, I would strongly encourage you, as these new APIs continue to develop, you're going to want to stay relevant in your integration technologies. So each release, kind of make it a practice to evaluate, hey, is there something that we couldn't communicate with before that we can now? Most of the time when people ask me, can Acumatica connect to this other app that we're using? My answer is, as long as they'll allow us access to the data. If they have an API structure that allows us to use web services to exchange data, then the answer is yes. And this is something that you're going to want to talk to your team about. And then again, bring in Courtney. And when we talk about things like this, I'm likely involved too with our existing customer base to figure out what the integration project might look like, who's doing what, and then have our team execute on that design. I think that I forgot to mention, and I'm wrapping up here on the functionality portion, at SWK, some of you know consultants that you've worked with in the past. We actually have overall between full-time employees and subcontractors that you've all have worked with, we're at about 9. So we do have 9 resources that are SWK, and then we have our development resources as well. So really just want to make sure everybody understands the breadth and depth of our Acumatica practice today. We really want you guys to be successful with Acumatica. If it's taking advantage of one of these features that I reviewed today, or integrating with something in the future, or possibly even, you know, adding a customization that you've been thinking about. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and exit out of there. I am going to turn it back over to Courtney just to see if there were any other questions for us. I would love to just have a few minutes of Q&A here if you guys have questions about anything that we've covered. Courtney, are there any? I'm having trouble getting over to the GoToWebinar side panel. Are there any other questions right now?
Yeah, let me take a peek. It doesn't look like anyone's put any in there yet. But thank you for, thank you, Jeremy, for all of that great information. I know there was a ton packed into today. It looks like we did just have one question come up, and I'm glad because, we'll give everybody a couple minutes to think about their questions and submit them. And if you do find that you have any after the webinar, or if you have a question that wasn't able to be answered, please don't hesitate to go ahead and shoot me an email, and I'm happy to get additional calls, follow-up calls set up based on the webinar. And everyone should have my email that's a customer already, but if you don't, it is Courtney, which is COURTNEY .Scott, SCOTT@swktech.com. And like I said, I'm happy to facilitate getting those conversations set up to make sure we have all of our information and questions answered. Jeremy, it looks like we did get another question. So let's see, are the UDFs easily accessed in designing reports now?
Yes, because they are built through the attribute tool, you have easy access to pull those in both to the inquiry tool, the generic inquiry, and the Acumatica report designer, if you're familiar with that tool. So either one, you're going to be able to pull in both the notes and the user-defined fields. There's definitely a little trick to knowing where to grab that data from inside of the schema. So again, feel free to reach out to Courtney, and we can provide you even just a little direction on where that data is stored. Because the way that those attributes are stored, they're all kind of located in one area and not attached to the tables of data, for example, on the customer record. It's in an attribute table. So, we can certainly provide you some quick direction on how to get to those user-defined fields, both the ones that you've been using and the new ones when you upgrade.
Awesome. Thank you, Jeremy, for answering that question. And Spencer, did that fully answer your question, or was there anything you wanted to follow up with? I'll give them just a minute because everyone's still on mute here, so I'm just looking on the questions. Good to go. So it sounds like we are all set on that. Did anyone else have any other questions at all that we wanted to submit before wrapping up? All right. Well, right now it looks like that may be it for questions, but like we mentioned, if anything does come to mind, please don't hesitate to reach out. And I guess that concludes our webinar for today. Thank you all so much for joining us.
Great. Thanks, everybody. And there is going to be a survey that's going to launch after the webinar is closed. If you are on the call today, we're going to be selecting at random two different people to receive free summit passes to the Acumatica Summit. You get that without the survey. With the survey, you are entered into the raffle for the $50 MasterCard gift card provided by Acu Exchange. So those are your two action items, and you've got 9 minutes here. We'll be in touch with the winners. And again, thank you everyone for joining. Hope to do this again soon.